everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters. With your questers Josh and Dan, I am Dan.
I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things Runvirical, because I'm going to make up another word because I can, and I absolutely will. So we're going to talk about the adventure originally published in the Earthdawn Journal number 2, Runvir's The Search for Wisdom, or in Shards Collection Volume 1 from 3rd edition, Runvir's Tomb. So if you have any questions for us about anything we're going to talk about tonight, please contact us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. You brought this up offline that somebody asked about this on the Discord?
Yeah, actually. Earlier today, as we are recording this, which was 2 weeks ago on the day this episode drops, I am not yet on my way to Gen Con. And when this drops, I will have just gotten back from Gen Con and recovering from that. Production!
The magic of time travel.
Yes. Somebody was basically asking if this was an adventure that could be adapted to be run in Parlength, and not really. I don't think. There might be aspects of it that could be adapted or brought into an expedition or adventure set in Parlength itself, but I do think that this adventure conceivably could be moved and set near Parlength without too much trouble.
Yes.
Maybe not super close, but even then you could probably fudge things to do it. I think probably setting it in either the those mountains to the west of Parlength.
The Scythian Mountains.
Yes, the Scythian Mountains.
Yes.
Are the closest. If you want to actually still set it in mountains, then that's probably the best place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially, you go a little bit further southwest down to the Skarvik Mountains.
Yeah.
You could set it there as well. Or you could just have some rocky hills nearer to Parlength and have it set in there and just kind of adapt the story or background or whatever to kind of fit the new location.
Yeah.
I think I don't have easy access to the Earthdawn Journal version.
Yeah.
But I know that the Shards version, Runvir's Tomb, specifically states that it takes place near Ustrect. Is that the case with the original?
So I went through both versions because I've run this adventure 3 different times.
Yeah.
This is the only one I've ever left a review on Drive-Thru-RPG for. And somebody figured out it was me, host of the show, and there because of my wording choices and sentence structure and so forth and so on. So good on you, smart listener. You figured me out. I'm the same guy. I've run this one.
Yeah, we've talked about this adventure and how it is a decent early introductory type adventure to run for people.
Yes, it is.
We have each run it. I've run it a couple of times. So
yeah. Did you run the Earthdawn Journal version or the?
Oh, I would have run the Earthdawn Journal version of it,
which is fair. So, in sitting down to do the research for this last night, I figured out that 15 years from publication dates apart, there are some differences now. They updated things from first edition, 1994-95, literally December 94, January 95 in the Earthdawn Journal, or 2009 for the 3rd edition. Here's the differences. They changed the political motivation. In the journal, they put down that the guy who's going to hire you, Jorgen Tovar, was going to hire you because he wanted you to go get something to help Garlthik One-Eye, because Jorgen worked for Garlthik One-Eye. In the updated version for the 3rd edition, they completely wrote Garlthik out of the equation. Garlthik isn't even mentioned. They just have Jorgen hiring you to get the items for his own means. That's it. So the motivation for the other group that might be spying on you in the journal version was Broocher's Brood was used at the end of the adventure to maybe take the stuff that you already gathered because you did all the hard work, and therefore you had to wrestle with that idea and then try and solve Broocher's Brood versus Jorgen's motivations. In the 3rd edition, ruffians kind of approach you a little bit, and Broocher's Brood is mentioned. Maybe it's them, maybe it's not them, maybe they're impersonating Broocher's Brood, but really the ruffians are hired by Jorgen to therefore take the stuff that you acquired and not have to pay you.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that was it. But they both start off in Kratas.
That's the question that I had, is that does the original version indicate that
You go down to Ustrect? Yes.
the tomb is still near Ustrect? Okay, that's
Yes.
a bit of a hike.
That's
honestly.
a hike. Yeah.
From Kratas, which is in sort of north central Barsave,
Yep.
all the way down to Ustrect, which is down along the edge of the Twilight Peaks.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the removal of the Garlthik One-Eye aspect in the revamp makes it a little bit more flexible in terms of where you can place it or where the adventure potentially starts,
Agreed.
because there isn't anything that's necessarily connecting it to Kratas as the place that it needs to be. In the original, if the motivation has something to do with Garlthik One-Eye, then that makes a lot more sense. But it's still quite a ways to go for this expedition. On the one hand, because you are dealing with a troll king, a former troll ruler of some sort, that would be something that would be set near or around the area of the former troll kingdom of Ustrect. I mean, it makes sense from a background standpoint that is likely where it would be.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's necessarily anything that requires that to be the case.
No.
It's set in a mountainous area. If you're going to be starting it in Kratas, why not have it be something that is hidden away somewhere in the Thailand Mountains, which is right nearby?
Agreed.
I can understand why the original choices might have been made. It's kind of like, oh, it's a troll king. Well, we need to associate it with the troll kingdom.
Yeah.
But I don't know that necessarily needs to actually be the case.
Agreed. So the difference is, 1994, 95, beginning of 95. First edition was all we had. Not a problem. It's fairly new. Still no problem. And traveling from Kratas to Ustrect, not that big a deal because you're making a blood promise for about a month of total time traveled, do the stuff, and get back. Great. Not a problem. So working in travel is a good old-fashioned D&D thing. This is your resource management. How many weeks of rations do you have? Do you hunt? Do you fish? Other adventures can happen, encounters with creatures and so forth and so on. It's absolutely fine. And to your point, since it's a troll king, I understand putting it near the Twilight Peaks for the troll moots and whatnot. I completely get all of it. It's also a shorter trek than from Parlength to the Discord question. Can you move it to Parlength? Absolutely could. But if you're still going to travel to Ustrect, that's an even longer trek.
Yeah. And I think the purpose, again, from the Shards rework standpoint, is that the Shards were developed to be even more easily dropped into an existing game as kind of interludes or one-shots or short adventures or anything like that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, fair. So I think so I also like the fact that the reworked 3rd edition takes Garlthik out, because this now makes it more accessible for the 4th edition, where now Garlthik has done his disappearing act from Kratas as well. So this is a more, if you want to include Brucher's Brood, fine. You can use them by name. If you don't, any gang of ruffians will do just fine. It doesn't have to be an organized gang from Kratas as far as Brucher's Brood is concerned, or anybody else. So the politics has been updated from original to 3rd edition. I get it. David Carolay is the author. He did a fantastic job with one or both of these. Whoever revamped it might have been him. I have no idea what Karsten Dam did as far as reaching out to him is concerned.
I suspect not, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's been 15 years in between. I doubt it as well. But somebody came along, updated it, added a short story for the Shards edition. It's a well-done short story. I like all of it. Again, this is one of my favorite adventures. I've run it 3 times, and I even borrowed the maps to run in a different game entirely. So to Josh's point from many, many episodes past, I borrowed this one aplenty for other games I was running. So it works. This is written for 3 to 5 novice adepts. So it's still a very good introductory adventure because it has, as I've said in my reviews, everything you need and almost nothing you don't. So you start off in whatever town you want to start off in, be it Parlength, be it Kratas now, and you are going to be meeting in a bar called the Drunken Dragon Inn, where probably likely you are staying and or eating, meeting people, whatever the case may be. There should be some role-playing involved where you finally get hired by a guy named Jorgen Torvin, whose original name in the first one was like Jorgen Tovar, which I think might be a little bit of a Hispanic last name, so changed it from that to more fantasy last name. There you are.
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I know. I actually knew somebody with the last name Tovar, so I get to say that. But he is, in the newest version, not working with Garlthik, which is just fine, but he is a 7th Circle wizard in the original, and I forget if he's the 7th Circle as well in the new one. Either way, he's a high-powered wizard, and he would like you to retrieve an item. Classic fantasy trope for an adventure. Go retrieve something for me, bring it back, I will pay you. He pays you half up front. You need to go get this item from a tomb, which is kind of like a care, but not quite. And when you come back, he will do the research on any items for you, and you make a blood promise for this. And so a blood oath, so that you do your part and he'll do his part. You're both good for it. There's a blood oath sworn. So you get to brush up on your role-playing skills, your social interactions, your blood oath contracts, per se. And then, of course, you get to go buy all your stuff for the number of rations you need and any other provisions you want for your resource management trek from point A to point B. That's how the whole thing starts. And perhaps you are spied upon by a rival gang, Brucher's Brood if you want to use them, or somebody else. Knock yourself out. So political intrigue starts.
Yeah, it's mainly just people that are interested in what's going on with Torvin and why he hired the characters and what he's wanting them to go do.
Absolutely.
His activities and stuff are of interest to other people.
Yeah. He's the high end of Circle Wizard that, any goings on are kind of note. Per se.
He's a 6th Circle Wizard in the Shards remake.
Gotcha. He was 7th originally, but whatever. Potato, at this point, he's an NPC, so who the heck knows? So you do, therefore, so the first thing is you meet him and get hired. Second thing is you have to travel near-ish to the Twilight Peaks or any mountainous region. Knock yourself out. This troll king, who's now deceased, could have been anywhere. It's easier explained if it's in the Twilight Peaks or somewhere nearby, but whatever. It doesn't necessarily matter. Where, of course, you are ambushed by the thugs who were eavesdropping on your conversation. They want to see what you're doing. They're going to interrogate you. Hopefully you don't lose this fight. But this is the fight where, since I was running this for the second time, one of my players absolutely fell in love with the exploding dice in Earthdawn. And this is a story I've told once before. I will tell it again. He was a first circle warrior because it was meant for novice adepts. And he absolutely critically fumbled on using his melee weapons. So his sword got knocked out of his hand, or dropped, or whatever, under the wagon. Couldn't retrieve it fast enough for this fight. He, however, had a shield with him. Did not have shield bash, so he got to use an unskilled attempt, or no talent attempt, at using his shield to hit somebody. Captain America style. So all he had at this point with the modifiers was a single D4 to hit somebody. I watched him roll every single time when he maxed it out 8 times and pulled off a 33 on a single D4. At that point, he said, I'm going to like this game.
In the original, does the ambush from the thugs happen near the tomb, or is it something that happens soon after they leave Kratas? Because in the revamp, it happens just outside of Kratas as they are just setting out.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's in both versions just the same. Basically, the political motivations at the beginning and the end change for the adventure. The middle part is pretty much the same. Once you leave and once you get back, that doesn't change a whole heck of a lot. Maybe the stat blocks do.
Right, yeah, obviously.
Events, but otherwise, yeah. Because it's go there, go through the tomb, get out of the tomb, come back. That doesn't change a whole heck of a lot. So from when I ran in the first edition, because I didn't run the Shards edition, that's when I remember. So the third thing is you finally get to the Twilight Peaks and you are attacked by Crystal Raiders. And so they come swooping in. So this is where you get to practice your kind of airship to ground combat rules, and or you're firing into the sky if you have any kind of long range spellcasters, archers, and whatnot, because you have now Crystal Raiders coming by to see what's going on, because you're now in their territory and they're looking at what intruders are in their territory.
And this is something that would potentially need to be tweaked if you are setting it in another area where you're not near the Twilight Peaks. You could still have trolls attacking. I mean, the Crystal Raiders do range far and wide, or you could just as easily have it be trolls that still inhabit the area and so are, somewhat protective of their territory.
Yeah. So you get through that, and then on to plot point number 4, which is this is your tomb crawl. You got to get in. You have to deal with traps. There's a demi-wraith in there. There's some troll cadavermen in there. Eventually do get to find the Oracle Fountain, which is a kind of a side plot, but it's a nice thing to have. This is where the tomb was based upon, building around this Oracle Fountain of Minbruges. And then if you're lucky, or unlucky, as you want to see fit, you come across Skarvik the Horror. And so it has travel, tomb crawling, traps, an Oracle Fountain from one of the passions, and of course a horror. So what's not to love about this adventure? It literally has everything you need.
The tomb is a little bit of a misnomer in a way. I mean, it is because this is where Runvir is buried.
Fair.
But this was an active complex prior to his burial. He built his base of operations around this fountain because of its importance to him. And so it was a place where he ruled from.
And spent a lot of time in.
And then when he passed, was entombed there.
Yeah, because he had his Nawats interred with him as a sign of respect. And so any underlings or council members or whatever for his kingdom, they were interred with him, which is where all the troll cadavermen come from. So there's a whole bunch of crypts in here. So it feels very Indiana Jones-ish.
Yeah. One thing actually that mildly bothers me about this is if there was the fountain that was in existence prior to this being made Runvir's fortress, and it was something that was tended to by questors of Minbruges, and I have not refreshed myself on what the supposed history of the location was.
Fair.
Obviously, all of that was pre-Scourge, so, through the Scourge and whatnot. But was it, even after his passing, was it something that was continued to operate as a shrine? That feels like that's something that is not potentially considered in terms of the history of the location. I don't know if it might be specifically mentioned, but it just seems weird to me that if we had this sacred site that the king moved his court to because of its importance, it is probably something that would have continued operating even after he passed.
Yeah, I think that was part of the short story in the beginning of the Shards collection, not in the original one at all, for space printing limitations, likely, don't know, is that he kept the location secret because he was not a smart king. And so what you're looking for is the Pearl of Wisdom, or the Stone of Wisdom, and the fountain in association with the Stone of Wisdom that he was using, that magical treasure, and the fountain to make most of his leadership decisions. And so when he died, he ordered that everything be sealed because I don't know if he was prideful. Yeah.
So basically he said, no, nobody else is going to have access to this. Yeah. I'm going to seal it all away.
Yep. I don't know how much sense it makes, but that's,
Yeah. Sorry, I am in a little bit of a mind space right now because of other stuff that we're working on of considering timelines and whether something actually makes sense if you spend more than 2 minutes thinking about it. Because I am willing to sort of bend a lot of rules and provide different reasons for why things happen, but if the timeline sort of doesn't add up, if it collapses in the face of fridge logic, then it just kind of bothers me because it's simply a case of thinking through the consequences or ramifications of choices that you make in terms of developing your setting or your story.
Yeah. Well, I found the sentence for you. Here's what comes. So the third edition in the Shards collection actually has a explanation as to why everything is the way it is. So he and his guards were sealed in with everything they could possibly need in the afterlife, so forth and so on. King Runvir's last servants sealed the tomb and the Oracle Fountain long before the Scourge began, and it is told that the kingdom of Ustrect declined steadily afterwards, since none of the succeeding kings was able to rule as wisely as he was, because they didn't have the fountain and they didn't have the Stone of Wisdom.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then most of this comes around because there was a troll quester, Dorthiel, received a vision from Minbruges about how to find the Oracle Fountain and so forth and so on. So most of this is all hinging upon a quester got a vision from Minbruges on where to find this. And then they were unsuccessful, but the whole thing has been popped up again since they were asking questions around. Now the wizard
has done some research. Yeah. Okay.
Once research, and you go get the thing that they were looking for as well. So things like that. So one thing begets another. There you are. So
yeah.
Does that pass the smell
I
test?
don't mean to be necessarily nitpicky about it. It's just the sort of question that comes to mind. And since I didn't reread this either version,
fair.
I kind of skimmed through it.
Yeah.
But
well, you threatened.
Since I didn't reread it and like look at the details and go, oh, okay, yeah, this generally holds together. I'm okay with that. I just run into issues when reading through an adventure summary or a story of some sort, a question occurs to me that seems relatively straightforward, question that it makes sense to ask, and it's not addressed, and thus the potential comes into play for everything to sort of completely fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
Which, it's the difference between me running the game as a fan back in the 90s as a much less experienced GM, and me as a writer/developer who wants to have a certain quality level of product that goes out. Again, not to diminish or minimize or put down the ability of the original writer and developer of this adventure, but I think you start to kind of see the difference maybe between an amateur product, again, no negative connotation is really intended with that, and a more polished professional one that you would see from a more official
production. Yeah, because this was, I mean, like I said, it was put out in 1994, late 94, 95. That was when the edition for Earthdawn Journal number 2 came out. And so the game was only out for about a year at that point. So there was maybe two books out, 3 books out?
There wasn't a whole lot of information that was available.
Great.
It's all understandable, and that's fine. Yeah. I'm just reminded of some of the work back in the earliest chapters of the Legends of Barsave Adventures when we were kind of doing editing and layout on those, especially that first one, which lays out a whole bunch of questions, sets up long-term questions, but doesn't really provide any answers. Yeah. And, my concern when working on that is, do we know what the answers are so that things can be consistent later on, thinking about those sorts of things? And, again, it's fine. Yeah. It's just the sort of way that my brain is working these days.
That's absolutely not a problem whatsoever. Because, again, I've run this as a fan, as a game master, never as a developer. So plot hook A made sense to me. Plot hook B made sense to me. Reasoning C for the decline of the kingdom, fine. It's explained in 2 sentences. I win. It works.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that it doesn't hold together. Yeah. From your summary here, it seems pretty reasonable.
And that's all it needs to be.
There's your explanation. After taking advantage of the Oracle Fountain and the Stone of Wisdom to rule the way that he did, he decides at the end of his life, for whatever reason, to make a selfish choice to not make those things available for anybody else, and thereby locks everything away and seals it. And hand-waving as maybe this is why the kingdom of Ustrect started to decline, because these treasures and resources were no longer available,
is largely unwritten.
And that is as good a reason as any for why things ended up the way that they were, because there really hasn't been a whole lot of detail or explanation given about what actually happened with Ustrect. I think the general gist is that, like Carafad and Landis, they were both badly hit and damaged and suffered as a result of what was going on with the Orichalcum Wars. And it was the losses suffered in that ultimately maybe led to the collapse of the kingdom.
Yeah.
But the idea that, oh, well, before that, if maybe Ustrect had access to these things, then maybe it would have weathered the events of the pre-Scourge era a little bit better.
Exactly.
It's all cool.
Yeah.
I'm not intending to criticize things.
No.
I'm just talking stuff through.
Well, and it's one of those, if it makes logical sense for how that universe operates, by all means, then continue. If it doesn't make sense and it all breaks down into I can just blow this apart with a puff of air, then by all means, don't play it. So the horror sneaks in during the Scourge, sensing the magic of the fountain, because that's ever bountiful, and gets trapped there by the magical traps. And so when you get there, it can't leave until you break down the magical barriers preventing it from doing so. So pretty much you get to fight the horror as well. So this is one of the few adventures that does end in the confrontation of a horror, but it's not a super powerful horror. It's just powerful enough for novices to, give a shot to, because Skarvik...
It's got some physical attacks with its tentacles. It can animate dead, which is where the cadaver men come from. It's got like a mystic blast kind of spellcasting effect, and that's largely it.
Yeah.
It can horror mark, but it doesn't really have a lot of the nastier powers that
bigger, badder
horrors can have that can really mess with you in terms of things like cursed luck or
karma tap and things like that,
terror or anything like that.
Yeah. So it's a rudimentary, not bad first level horror, essentially, if you wanted to put a number on it.
It's kind of like on Nasher scale, roughly, just, with more brains than Nashers typically have.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like I said, it's a perfect introduction to the world of Earthdawn for your socialization, skill talents to use for negotiating the contract, your travel resource management, your care delving. So if you're going to do all of this, and I recommend you do, go back and listen to episode 192 for our underground exploration safety tips, and episode 196 for cares, because they both kind of apply here for underground traps and things to come across. And then you, of course, have to fight the demi-wraith, the troll cadaver men, interact with the oracle fountain, which is again more social skills, and then Skarvik, this horror. So it has everything Earthdawn related: cadaver men, a horror, your travel and your social things, and then of course you have to get back out and get back to Kratas, where you have to renegotiate either with the group that jumps you at the end, pretending to be not, or pretending to be, who knows, however you want to run that one, whichever version you want to go with, or then you have to go deal with the possible betrayal, spoiler alert for a 30-year-old adventure. Jorgen Torvin doesn't necessarily be on the up and up. He's going to try and take the stuff from you without having to pay you. So if the blood oath counts, whatever, he'll do it. If not, there's that as well. So maybe you give him over your magical items and he'll do the research for you. Maybe you won't be able to find him in 30 days. Who knows? So
yeah, and there are a couple of interesting magical treasures that you can recover.
Absolutely.
In addition to the Stone of Wisdom, which provides bonuses to social defense and detect influence and provides some nice social bonuses.
Yeah.
You've got Razor Claw, which is a sword. It's a nice little novice tier magical thread troll sword.
Yep.
And then the Staff of Agrikal, which is a staff that is a magical quarterstaff that provides bonuses to physical defense and parry and things like that. It's a little bit weird, honestly, that it's a staff that, at least in the revised version, it's a little bit weird that it's a staff that is held by a wizard.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't provide any kind of magical bonuses at all. It does increase damage compared to a standard quarterstaff and provides bonuses to physical defense and parry.
Rank 4, yeah.
There are bonuses to spellcasting and thread weaving that are at the higher ranks,
4 and 5.
but it still feels weird. It's an odd mishmash of bonuses. I think it might have been designed that way so that potentially anyone could use it. It feels like a staff that was created for staff master, which is to say a sword master character that uses a staff as their chosen weapon.
Because in the original, it makes even less sense.
something that was custom made for like the group where they had a swordmaster / magician of some sort.
Like that,
so I'm going to give you a thing that provides bonuses to both of your stuff.
Combat mage. Yeah.
Yeah. I find that thematic mismatch of its abilities to be a little bit weird.
You're not wrong, because in the like I said, the original Earthdawn journal, it makes even less sense because all it did at rank 1 was +4 damage steps, so combat weapon. Rank 2 was +2 physical armor, and rank 3 was +2 mystic armor. So again, no spellcasting things at all. Rank 4 was a physical and mystic armor bonus, and rank 5 was finally something to the spellcasting step. You're like, what? Doesn't make any sense at all for a magical staff. So I think you're right. It's a magical quarter staff to be used for a physical thing. Maybe if you happen to cast spells too.
A magician is not gonna find something useful out of that early on.
Yeah.
And then a character that is going to want to take advantage of the bonuses that it does provide gets stuff that isn't of much use later on in the progression. It's just a weird...
Yeah, because it is a quarterstaff, and so therefore it's meant to be used as a physical weapon, melee weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, a staff is a staff.
Agreed.
It can be used to hit people, even if magicians traditionally don't do that.
Yeah. Well,
because they don't have the melee weapon ability. And at least the original version is providing armor bonuses, which are generally useful for anyone.
Yep.
So that's nice. I mean, the staff in the revised version is providing physical defense bonuses, which can also be useful for a magician, since those tend to be a little bit on the lower side. But the parry bonuses, again, it just feels like a little weird, thematically strange kind of selection of powers and bonuses that it gives.
Yeah, it's a little incongruous, because I remember in first edition, there was a special thing with quarterstaves where if you took a defensive stance, your physical defense went up 1. And so...
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I don't remember
what they're playing on.
specifically.
I made a thief with that quarterstaff, which is why I took that one. But that's all I can remember. So I'm thinking maybe they were playing on that and leaning on it a whole lot of heavy lifting from that one sentence about a quarterstaff giving you a +1. But other than that, yeah,
maybe.
Why does threadweaving at rank 5 and spellcasting at rank 4? That's a whole spellcasting thing that maybe you'll get there eventually if you've got somebody who's waiting a long time to cast spells. I don't know. A little incongruous on the Staff of Agricol. Anyway.
So the physical defense bonus in defensive stance is also in the 3rd edition.
Oh, yeah.
If that was something that was in there originally, it sort of carried through.
Yeah, that's all. Like I said, I think that one sentence is doing a lot of heavy lifting for the Staff of Agricol as to why you're getting damage steps and then physical defense and parry talent and so forth and so on. So yeah, I agree with you. Little weird staff. It's not quite putting things together the way they should. And the Stone of Wisdom, unless the wizard who hires you backstabs you and you don't want to give him the Stone of Wisdom, he's going to end up with that. So pretty much what you're going to be left with for magical treasure is Razor Claw for whatever fighter you've got, and maybe the Staff of Agricol for whoever can use it, really.
Well, the staff, I mean, in the revised version, the staff is held by the wizard.
Yes.
It's his staff.
Right.
So it's, again, unless you kill him.
Good luck with that.
Which is something that is possible to happen in the revised version because of his double crossing of you. That is not something that is an option in the original version.
Yeah. So
much.
It's an interesting adventure. Like I said, you can run it either way because the beginning and the ending change. So whichever one you want to do, mix and match. Knock yourself out. The middle parts of get the job, travel, get the stuff, travel back, that doesn't change a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah. I think the key portion of this adventure and the thing that most people would want to take as the part that they use in their own games is the tomb itself.
Yes.
And I think the framing story of how and why the player characters get there is a lot more flexible than the tomb itself and the features of the tomb.
Agreed. And in the 15-year interim between publication dates, the updated maps in the Shards collection, worth it. The updated art for the horror, worth it as well. So I applaud the updated changes. I like the introductory short story now for the Shards edition. That makes a lot more sense and kind of ties things up into a bow. The inclusion of the quester is a good idea. So I like the updated version. If I ever need to run it again, I will run that one. So the treasure, I would swap out a different treasure, whatever.
Yeah.
But Razor Claw, I think I've handed out like 3 or 4 times, and so there's 3 or 4 people running around with Razor Claw from different adventures. So it's a pretty easy sword, and it's only got 4 ranks, and so it's not a bad first weapon to start with as far as handing out magical thread treasure. So it all works. Any further ideas, Josh? Okay, so I've run this 3 times. What happened when you ran it? Anything special?
I've run it once or twice. I can't recall anything particularly special about any of the times that I ran it. Yeah. The only other thing maybe that I want to mention is the Oracle Fountain itself, because it is a potentially useful, and depending on the type of game you're running, potentially sort of game-breaking artifact of sorts. I mean, obviously it is stuck where it is. Mm-hmm. You can't like take it with you, but basically once per year, a person can ask a question of the fountain and get a truthful answer. Yes. Basically, each person can ask a question a year, so you have the group come to it, and that is like, I mean, it's useful possibly as a way to learn key knowledge about magic items. Or something along those lines. Just, that's one of those things as a GM that you may want to be potentially cautious about, is giving your player characters not necessarily easy, but once they have unlocked it, you have a hard time putting that genie back in the bottle.
Agreed. Again, I like it. It's still one of my favorites to run if I ever do it again. So if you have any questions for us, folks, hopefully the person in Discord who asked this question, you now have all the answers you need for this. So please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com if you need anything else asked about this adventure. Until next time, threaten me with a good time for your legend.
Good night, everybody.